I was looking through my papers to come up with some material for a video I had planned, and as I was doing that, I found my copy of Knave, which I had printed out a little while ago, intending to do something on, and I probably forgot about. The Knave system is, you can see the credits here, a follow-up, I guess, or a subsequent game to Maze Rats, and I did a video on Maze Rats, and you can see the link to that video here. It is, I haven't really looked at it much. I purchased it and printed it out and then, put it away, basically. Here it is, and the entirety of it is 27 pages. This is the character sheet that comes with it, and because this is the character sheet, I think I'm going to create 3 characters. Why not? I'm going to take that as the lead. This is going to be one of those videos where if you're interested just in the gameplay, you should move ahead to the timestamp for that, but I'm going to be going through the system right now a little bit with you because I don't know it, and I'm going to take this opportunity in a way to show you kind of what I look for when I go into a system for the first time and how I approach something here. So it looks like we've got our basic 6 abilities here, and it says each ability has 2 related values, a bonus and a defense. It's a 3d6. We take the lowest of those 3 as the ability bonus and then add 10 to find its defense. So let's see, we roll a 2, 2, and a 6 for strength. The lowest is a 2, so my strength has a bonus of 2 and a defense of 12 correspondingly. Once you finish rolling, you may optionally swap the scores of the 2 abilities. Interesting. So basically what this is this. So what do we say here? The lowest is the ability, so my bonus, say, on strength would be a 1, and my defense would be an 11. Start with 2 days of rations and 1 weapon of their player's choice. This rule set, by the way, has notes down the side, designer notes here, to explain the rationale behind the rule. And let's look at this. Ability defense is my term for what is normally called ability scores. I refer to them this way to make it clearer how they work. During opposed saves, explained later. Roll on the starting gear tables to determine starting armor and equipment. Roll twice on the gear table. You may recall from Maze Rats, and I don't know how this works vis-a-vis Maze Rats, but Maze Rats had some wonderful random tables that were very easy to use and quite evocative, so we'll see how this one plays out. His note here, rolling for starting equipment dramatically speeds up character creation process. There are rules for if you want to shop for equipment, you get 3d6 times 20 to find their starting copper pieces. We'll just probably do it randomly. And we have a number of item slots equal to our constitution defense, and the items must fit into those slots. We roll a 1d8 to determine our starting and maximum hit points. It says all hit dice are assumed to be d8s in Knave for everything. Simplifies the game, and it keeps things compatible with the stats in most OSR books. A PC's healing rate is 1d8 plus the constitution bonus, and this is their exploration speed, 120 feet per exploration turn. I'm not going to do anything with measuring speeds, distances, as I typically do not in the games that I run. We have some traits here, no real indication. I guess we're meant to roll on any or all of these if we want for physique, skin, hair, clothing, face. Now, as a note, when I look at something like this, physique, face, skin, hair, and clothing, the thing that I go to immediately is clothing, because this is going to tell me, this is going to give me, this is a D20 table here, this is going to give me some kind of anchor for maybe a story about my character who is filthy. So one way to start would be to roll, I've got a filthy character, I've got a ceremonial, all right, got character with clothing that's filthy. I have a character with clothing that's ceremonial, and 2 ceremonial and 1 filthy. This could be the basis of a story. Perhaps the 2 ceremonials are guards taking a filthy prisoner somewhere. Perhaps on this journey something happens and the 3 of them band together to do something. Or perhaps the 2 ceremonials are somehow religious figures in some manner, and the filthy is some religious dissident, and there's a story about that. So this is not going to be my story, but I'm just giving you an example of, when I look at something like this, where my eye immediately goes to what table it goes to start to generate something that will be an anchor point for a story. Character generation, we're going to invent or roll the rest of our traits, and this is the rules for that: physique, face, skin, hair, clothing, and then we have virtue, vice, speech, background, misfortune, and alignment. So for example, let's just take the ceremonial role that we got and bring that to a connection with the background. We got a 15, outlaw. So we have a ceremonial outlaw, and for the other ceremonial, we have a ceremonial tracker. And then for the filthy one, we have a mariner. So from all that information, we take a look at these notes, and here the fulcrum of this story is going to be this filthy mariner. So for that, we're going to roll on this misfortune table, and we get a 6. So we have there a defrauded filthy mariner, and this now could become the basis of generating a story. So what could the story be? Well, we have somebody who was perhaps once a well-regarded trader, merchant marine, part of a complex system of goods and services traveling the seas. However, something happened. We don't know what. He was defrauded in some way. And as such, the guards from the kingdom are out to get him. They have been hired. Maybe they're mercenaries. One of them is a tracker. One of them is an outlaw who perhaps used to be part of the mainstream guarding of the kingdom, but now is a freelancer, as it were. And the 2 of them have banded together to track down this mariner. But the mariner has been defrauded, indeed, and has convinced this outlaw and this tracker that he was defrauded and his livelihood was taken away from him unfairly. And now the 3 of them have a mission to go back to the city, the stronghold, to break in somewhere, perhaps to find the person who defrauded him or something. I don't know. I'm just making this up, but trying to demonstrate how out of this type of random table, you could begin to get a story without even dealing with your stats necessarily. Now, this isn't necessarily going to be my story, but this is just a story that one could devise. Next, we have the armor, tools, gear. There's prices here as mentioned, clothing. There are wages. You can hire henchmen apparently here. And I don't know whether you can purchase a building, or I guess you can purchase a building, perhaps for your own lair. We come to how to play, and it explains how each of the 6 abilities are used in different circumstances. So what strength is melee attacks, physical things, dexterity, saves requiring poise, speed, and reflexes, constitution, pretty straightforward. Intelligence, used for saves requiring concentration and precision, resisting magic, recalling lore. This could possibly be a catch-all one. Wisdom, used for range attacks, and saves requiring perception, and charisma, used for saves to persuade, deceive, interrogate, intimidate, charm, etc. We have item slots, as mentioned, equal to our constitution defense. Most items take up 1 slot. And what is the saving throw? If a character attempts something where the outcome is uncertain and failure has consequences, they may make a save. To make a save, we add our bonus of the relevant ability to a d20, and we're looking for a greater than 15. That will be a success. If not, it will be a fail. If the save is opposed by another character, instead of aiming to exceed 15, the side doing the rolling must get a total greater than the opposing character's relevant defense score in order to succeed. So we have an example here. A wizard casts a fireball spell at a goblin who gets a saving throw to avoid. This is resolved as an opposed save using the wizard's intelligence versus the goblin's dexterity. The goblin may roll plus their dexterity bonus, hoping to exceed the wizard's intelligence, or the wizard may roll plus their intelligence, hoping to exceed the goblin's dex. This is useful for the soloist because you could run things either way and have a little bit more control over the die rolling. It says if there are situational factors that make a save significantly easier or harder, the referee may grant the roll advantage or disadvantage. If it has advantage, we roll 2d20 and use the better. If it has disadvantage, we roll 2 and use the worse. We have a little NPC reaction chart here, which is always useful. Combat. We have an initiative determination and can strike adjacent foes, but ranged cannot be used if the shooting character is engaged in melee. So we need to make a choice here. We're rolling a d20. We're adding our strength or wisdom, depending on whether it's melee or ranged. And we're looking for a total greater than the defender's armor defense. Then it will hit. If not, it will miss. Again, we can alternatively do this roll by the defender rolling a d20 and adding their armor bonus, hoping to roll a total greater than the defense of the ability of the attacker is using. So it is, you can do it either way, and probably this is the more intuitive way. On a hit, you roll their weapon's damage to determine how many hit points the defender loses. There may be a bonus in there. There's a little note here. If you reach 0 HP, you're unconscious. When you're minus 1 HP, you are dead. You can roll up a new level 1 PC when your old one dies and rejoin the party as soon as possible. So there's a little recovery there. We have little stunts here in combat. Stunts are combat maneuvers such as stunning, shoving, disarming, tripping, sundering armor, and so on. They are resolved with a versus save. They may not cause damage directly, but may do so indirectly. So pushing an enemy off a ledge, for example, or maybe perhaps causing a negative modifier moving forward. And the referee is the final arbiter as to what stunts can be attempted in a given situation. Characters can gain advantage in combat by attacking a target that is unaware, on lower ground, off balance, disarmed, distracted, or tactically disadvantaged. So in that case, you would apply an advantage to your attack roll, or you could make an attack and the stunt attempt in the same round against the opponent without advantage. If you roll a natural 20 or the defender rolls a natural 1, the defender's armor loses 1 point of quality and they take an additional die of damage. There's a morale rating for monsters and NPCs, usually between 5 and 9. When they face more danger than they were expecting, the referee will make a morale roll by doing 2d6 and comparing the result to the NPC's morale rating. If the roll is higher, the NPC will attempt to flee. Okay, that's good. There's hirelings that can also make morale rolls and flee. Healing. After a meal and a full night's rest, PCs regain lost hit points equal to D8 plus their constitution bonus. Resting at a safe haven restores all lost HP. All monsters from OSR bestiaries should work as is in Knave with no major conversion needed. Here are some guidelines. I'm not going to go through all of this. I'm not sure where I'm going to get my monsters from, but maybe there's some here anyway. I don't know. 1000 XP, gaining a level. I also am going to sort of skip over that because I'm not going to be showing any leveling up here. I may begin actually with a 3rd level character, as I often do. I'll check into that and see. If I do, I'll indicate that at character creation. The spell lists from any old school RPG will work, but they are lists here as well. Spells are cast out of spellbooks, which must be held in both hands and read aloud. In order to gain a new spellbook, they must adventure for them by recovering them from dungeons or looting them from other magicians. The higher the level of the spellbook, the rarer and more valuable it is. PCs openly carrying high-level spellbooks are likely to be hounded by bandits and wizards looking to acquire them. If you prefer spells that are levelless and scale up as the caster becomes more powerful, use this list. In the following spells, L is a number equal to the caster's level. An item is an object able to be lifted with one hand, and an object is anything up to human size. So, for example, Befuddle L. Creatures of your choice are unable to form new short-term memories for the duration of the spell, so this will level up as you are leveled up. Okay, so some optional rules. Starting debt, well, that's interesting. This will be, for example, that could be an adventure generator if you start out with a debt to somebody. So here we have a 3, we have city official. If we take that, say, with this whole business here that we were talking about, perhaps our defrauded filthy mariner, well, he's defrauded, but somehow he owes a debt to a city official in some way, and you could create something like that if you were trying to do a dungeon crawl kind of scenario. Perhaps you were going to be sneaking into an official building to recover something or something like that. Little indication of unarmed combat. Damage from unarmed attacks are determined by the character's strength bonus. I like this. Parties with strong stomachs and daring palates may turn to slain monsters as a source of food. A dead monster has a 1 in 6 chance of being usable to eat, so that's great. And it will explain a little bit more about that. I like that. Some more rules for falling, climbing, fire. Some optional rules for wilderness travel. I don't know. I haven't thought yet what I'm going to be doing here with my little story, but this is a very basic wilderness procedure here to determine course of travel, weather, check navigation. Maybe I'll do something like that. Maybe we'll be walking somewhere to go somewhere. I don't know. We'll see. Foraging and hunting in the wilderness. It's been a while since I've done a wilderness thing, so perhaps I will. Vessel movement at sea. This is something I've talked about here and there in videos and acknowledge that I am very, very underserving the population of people who want to see some kind of sea adventure because I just don't do it. It seems a little intimidating to me, but I love the idea of it and have a bunch of different rules that have weather related, I should say a bunch of different rule sets that have weather related rules in it. There's flying here and mounts. So there's quite a bit in here. And this looks like a list of names, unnumbered, but just a list of suggested names. And random spell generation. Love this. This is something that may be familiar to you from Maze Rats. There's a spell formula. So for example, you're going to roll on the first thing you're going to do is a d6 to see the formula. So here we're going to get an ethereal effect and a, oh, I'm supposed to roll 2 d6s actually. So what we're going to get here is a physical effect plus a physical element. So the physical effect is going to be this, and we're going to be rolling 2 d6s. Again, will be familiar to you. So this would be a transmuting crow. So in this case, it would be a transmuting crow spell. So what could that be? Well, that could be something like a crow could be sent on a mission, on an information gathering mission, come back and transform into a human or a humanoid who would be able to convey information about whatever they found. For example, I don't know. Now, that type of spell, of course, wouldn't be one as an attack spell, as some of these are, but it nevertheless could be magical use or perhaps could function by attacking a monster. We do have random monster generation rules here, and we combine an animal with an effect, element, or form from the magic tables, and then we give it bonuses and attack bonuses, damage, morale, etc. There are lots of aerial, terrestrial animals, physical effects, abilities, impervious, stealthy, teleporting, strangling. We have tactics that they use, harry, protect leader, target leader. They have personalities, they have weaknesses. So a lot of room for flexibility here. And then there is an existing table here, unfortunately unnumbered. Looks like it's, well, it looks like it's 24, so that's a little tough to use with a dice, but it's 24 monsters here that are already built for you. A mastodon, giant spider, vampire, kind of random stuff, a dragon. Not really an indication of level or anything like that, but at least we have something. So that is a quick look over the Knave rule set. And I do think actually what I'm going to do is maybe I will stick with what I've got here. The outlaw, the tracker, and this mariner here. I mean, why not? I rolled it up and started to think about it. I think these are going to be my characters, and in some way, to the extent that there is a hero, I'm feeling that, or a perspective, I'm feeling that this mariner is the one that is going to be guiding at least most of the story. That the outlaw and the tracker are going to have some kind of backstory, that they have become connected with him in some way, and whatever mission that they're all going on is really led by this mariner who was defrauded. What did I say? I said he could have been defrauded by what? An official, I think it was. I can't even remember. But I will go back and note that down. I mean, why not? Like, we might as well. Oh, the starting debt, right? City official, I think is what I said. Too bad it wasn't a pirate. Some kind of debt to some city official is going to be involved here. And I'll say I haven't really done anything that involves this type of, let's just say, bureaucratic background. So it's a potentially interesting setup. I'll need to think about it and come back and start to develop the story here before we even get to rolling up the characters. In the interest of time, I started creating my characters off camera, but I'm going to do the last character on camera so you can see how it goes. I got my ceremonial outlaw is named Severin. I'm putting everybody at level 3, and I'll show you what that means as we go through and create our hero. So these are the stats for Severin and Demore. Demore is the ceremonial tracker, and I did it completely randomly for the actual stats, as you'll see in a minute, and I chose the items that they carried. I chose the weapons intentionally, so I gave Severin a dagger and I gave Demore a cudgel. This is the tracker, and I chose the rest of that randomly. So Severin ended up with some manacles, which actually is very thematic because I think our fellow here, as yet unnamed, is going to be either in chains or having been in chains. And he got a 10-foot chain, a fishing rod, and some soap. And then Demore got some spikes, a sack, an air bladder, and a small bell. So I have, as I said earlier, decided this is going to be a nautical theme in some manner. The fact that our hero is a mariner, he's a defrauded mariner, and his clothing is dirty. He's been in some situation that has caused him to have some dirty clothing. So let's show and also as a reminder, he had been defrauded by he owes a starting debt to some city official. That was all earlier on. And now I'm going to show you quickly how we roll up the characters. So what we're doing for the characters is we're getting our traits here and we're rolling 3d6s, and I found my most nautical of d6s. We're rolling 3d6s. We're taking and going down the line here, strength, dexterity, constitution, etc. We're taking the lowest value. So in this case, unfortunately, it's a 1. I've been rolling a lot of 1s and entering that in. The defense value associated with it is a +10. I'm not going to put that in right yet, and I'll explain why in a minute, and I'll just continue to roll down. So in this roll, I'll make it a 2, so my dexterity here is a 2, and I think we'll go to the dice tray for some muted sound. Not a better roll, unfortunately. And my intelligence roll is coming up with a 2. It's a very, very bad roll overall for this guy. This is partially why I leveled up. Well, at least I got a 3 here. That came in at wisdom. And a 2 on charisma. And the final one, well, that's it. So these are the values that I actually rolled up. Now, I can do 2 things. One, I can switch 2 values if I wish. They're pretty poor rolls. And I am starting at level 3, which means I can level up by 1 point each, or 3 of the values. So think what I'm going to do for this, he's a mariner. I think he needs to be stronger. I can only really level it up by 1. So I'm going to level up the strength to 2. I will level up his constitution, I think, to 2. And I'm going to say, maybe I don't generally do this. Maybe I'll make him a little charismatic. I'm going to level up my charisma to 3. Now I can also switch one of these with each other, but the values they're fairly, maybe I'll switch strength and charisma. So I'm going to get strength to a 3 and charisma will be back down to a 2. And then we will add it in the 10 to get the defense. So the strength value, the bonus of 13 becomes a strength, the bonus of 3 becomes a defense of 13, the dexterity of 2 becomes a defense of 12, and so on. Our item slot limit is going to be our constitution value. So I'll put a little line here to indicate that I can only carry up to 12 things. We're going to indicate this is a level 3. We're not doing experience. And my armor is going to come from whatever armor I give him. And partially, he's filthy. So, partially I feel like he should have no armor. I was doing, there's a D20 roll to get the armor. I was sort of actually doing that, but I'm going to just say he has no armor because thematically that makes sense, which means he's not going to get any armor benefit unless, let's see, if PC is not wearing any armor, their armor defense is 11 and their armor bonus is a 1. So we're going to go with that because I think thematically he's not going to just have any. The hit points were D8, and it said you could have a minimum of 5 if you rolled below that, and in both cases when I was rolling them up, I rolled a 1. So the hit points or the health points on the other guys, they're all going to be 5 because I'm just going to raise this to a 1. So my rolling on this was pretty poor. So we got 5 and 5, and the question is, is he really just having nothing? Am I going with he's completely with nothing? I'm not sure that's going to make a lot of gameplay sense. The instructions here are to roll twice on this table and once on the following 2. And that is what I did do for the other characters. So I think I'll just do that for him and we'll see what we get. I don't know that anything is so great here. So we got a 2 pulleys. That doesn't make a ton of sense, but we'll give him some pulleys and we will give him 17 is a sack. So he's got pulleys and a sack. Does he have a weapon? Does he have a weapon? Actually, 1 weapon. Yes, we'll give him a weapon. We will just give him a very basic, we'll just give him we're going to give him a dagger. We're going to roll to see once on these 2 tables. He has some nails and he has some cook pots. Nails and cook pots. Maybe he was a cook of some sort. I don't know. We're going to find out. I didn't, by the way, I said that Damore was athletic and I called Severin brawny sort of after looking at the values. I didn't really go with anything beyond that in terms of like their physique, their face, their skin, their hair. I'm not super interested in that. And I didn't do this randomly. I just chose words that were here under the physique. So what is our physique? I feel like our physique of this guy might end up being, let's see what his constitution is 2. Yeah, he's filthy. Maybe he's malnourished. Is that I feel like he should be malnourished in some manner. We don't really have that as a choice. Scrawny. Maybe he's scrawny. I'm going to just say that I'm going to call him a little bit malnourished, even though he has a cook pot. My sense of him is he's in need of help here. Now, what I want to do next is point out a couple of things. First off, there's this NPC reaction table here, and part of me wants to just roll on it. It's not very detailed, and mostly it tends toward the negative, to see what is the relationship among these three. So I do have this sense that there is, you know, he is the prisoner in some way. The fact that these guys are, their garb is both described in the same manner as ceremonial, has, you know, in some way they're united. But the question is, like, are they helping him? Are they not helping him? There's not enough nuance here. So what I thought I would do, take out the solo RPG wallet that I've got and go to this table here. This is my D20 probability table here, and just give a roll to see, like, how likely is it? Like, what's the feeling I get that these guys are friendly toward him or helping him? So that's the question I'm asking. That's going to be the option A on that table. So we're going to give this a D100 roll and see what we get. So the question is, well, I got a 90, so it's pretty likely 96. Wow. So it is, so 95, we're just almost sure or definitely that they're helping him. All right. So we're almost sure, definite that there's some helping going on here. Maybe these manacles that this Severin is carrying are broken manacles. Maybe the chain is a chain that was once on this guy and not. Maybe they're helping him in some way get to the city official who has defrauded him. I don't know. I have some ideas for more of the context, but I realize we have not given our hero a name yet. And I did choose names from Knave, although I didn't do it randomly. It's actually not a number table. I just sort of chose something that spoke to me. So let's see, we've got Severin, Demore, and how about Wymark? Why not Wymark? I like to vary the number of syllables of names that I'm using because it leads to less confusion, but there's not a lot of variability here on the table for a single syllable name at least. So two things we haven't taken care of here. One is the assignment of any magic spells. We have slots available for them. Based on level 3, they could each have level up to 3 spells. However, as things have clearly been happening before we get to this scene, I'm going to do a D3 roll to determine how many spells they actually have, representing perhaps things that have gone on, or I don't know if you could lose magic. Maybe you can lose magic. So this fellow here, the outlaw, has 1 spell. And of course, none of them necessarily have to be magic users, but they are going to be magic users. Perhaps not at the greatest level they could be. The tracker is going to have 1 spell, and our hero is going to have 3 spells. That was a D3 roll, by the way, that I was making. So we're going to do the spell assignment randomly. We have 100 spells. We have a D100 list of existing spells, and then of course I showed you at the beginning we could roll up and make some spells too. I don't think I'm going to do that just in the interest of time. So we will give a D100 roll here for the Outlaw's spell, and no, this is definitely not, that's not going to work. All right, we're going to do a D100 roll here for the Outlaw spell. That's a 41, and the Outlaw has Illuminate. A floating light moves as you command. All right. I don't know whether it's going to be relevant here. We have 3 spells for Denor, who is the tracker, and he's got a gate, a portal to a random plane can open with that spell. Sort. Inanimate objects sort themselves according to categories, he said. The categories must be visually verifiable. That's pretty cool. And 83, swarm. You become a swarm of crows, rats, or piranhas. You only take damage from area effects. That's pretty cool. So we have this Denor tracker is a kind of animist manipulator. That kind of makes sense. If he's a tracker, maybe he can morph into something that would mimic the things that he's trying to track. So thematically, that makes sense for him. Now we're on to Waymark, our Defrauded Mariner, he has spell 87, which is an anchor. An object becomes the target of every spell cast near it. So it's a magical anchor to become the recipient of the magical energy. 58. Pacify. Your level creatures have an aversion to violence. Oh, that's cool. Maybe we can attempt a peaceful transition through this adventure. 49. Finally, Marble Madness. Your pockets are full of marbles, and we will refill every round. Well, I don't know that marbles thematically make any kind of sense, but maybe he's got some rocks in his pockets that he's dragging around. Who knows? All right, we'll get that into our character sheet off camera. And then the final thing I'm going to do is I do like to give out a trinket, some type of magical item, and typically I'm going to give that to every character. However, in this instance, I'm not doing that. I'm going to give one magical or one trinket, one treasure that this group is carrying, and I'm getting it from the Hot Springs Island material that I have, and I've done a video on that if you're interested in this great resource. It's going to end up being a Night Axe treasure, because this on their treasure tables is the closest to something that is, no, not the Nereids, sorry, I got that wrong. It's the Nereids treasure, because that's something that is nautically themed explicitly. That's also a D100 roll, so we're going to see. This is just going to be something that is maybe on the boat with them. Maybe they've rescued it. Maybe they have it. I don't know. 65. Let's see. What is that going to be? It is a Seaweed of Enchantment. So they've got a Seaweed of Enchantment on this boat. And we can turn to this explanation here. The Seaweed of Enchantment, a bundle of wet seaweed held together by an ivory ribbon. When touched by anyone with a command of enchantment magic, it transforms into a 7-foot staff. As a staff, it improves the wielder's enchantment-based magic by 50%, but no heat-related magic can be cast. All right, well, that's not necessarily going to help us this specific benefit, but in some manner, the Seaweed of Enchantment is going to be, when held, it's going to offer a boon or a benefit in some manner. Maybe that'll allow us, maybe we'll translate that into allowing a reroll. I don't know, we'll see. So we've got our tracker, our outlaw, and our manacled mariner, or I don't know if he's manacled. We haven't decided that yet, I think. Maybe he's not. All right, and here we have, coming into view, our party. We have the 2 guards with our hero here, the manacled or not manacled defrauded mariner. And they're at sea, as we discussed, and the question is really what to do now, because here they are in the middle of the sea, and I'm going to turn to these cards. These are the Pocketlands Geomorph cards, the High Seas deck. I did a video on these. There's a Kingdom deck, and then there's this High Seas deck. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Deeps version of them. There's 3 different types of cards here. You can go to the other video to see how these work. We've got the Deeps, the Shallows, and the Kelp Sea. I'm going to just say looks like we're in the Deeps. So we're going to just draw a card here. I'll give them a shuffle, and I'm not using them with the rules, but just to sort of give something, because here we are and floating along, and it's not too great a shuffle, but it's something. And we will just draw a card and see what we get here on the card. There we go. Not a whole lot of more sea. All right, let's see. What is this? What are we seeing here? We are seeing we're seeing some kelp here. So we're sailing along. We're seeing some kelp. It looks like it's very deep here. These are the real depths. There's some kelp here. So I guess that's going to send us to the kelp deck, perhaps. We're in the Kelp Sea here, and Just want to show you that I'm doing this totally randomly, so you'll have to bear with the shuffling as we go. And I really have no sense here of what should happen or will happen in the adventure. I'm not really sure how I got to a whole mariner theme, but here we go. There we are. And what is this? This is looks clearly a volcano. We've got a volcano with some forest, and we have a location. So we're going to be sailing through the seas, arriving at, I guess that would be an island, a volcanic island with some forest and some type of location. And I guess we'll go back to Knave and see if we can, what we can get from Knave for this. So this represents our journey thus far. Before we even embark, or disembark, I should say, on the island, before we even figure out what this location is, I want to have some sense of what the approach that we're taking to this island, a reason for being there. And for that, I'm going to go to this table, which is from the same designer of Knave, Ben Milton, that he wrote up to be used with Maze Rats to play Maze Rat Solo. And I've done a video showing how I use this material there, but I'm going to use it here to try to stick to the same sort of scenarios, or same designer at least, reading dark and light for my 2d6 roll. And the first roll is enraging. So our action is enraging. We are angry in some manner, and the subject of that rage is going to be raiders. So I guess we are the enraging raiders, and we are here to get something, clearly. What might that be? Well, perhaps we're here to get revenge, or we're here to get access to the city official who wronged and defrauded our mariner here. So that is the feeling of why we're here. There's an aggressive nature to it. We're going to pull up to the island, as it were. There's a volcano and some forest here. And I'm going to continue with Maze Rats to roll up and see. Well, first, before I go there, actually, I think we're going to see perhaps what the likelihood of having this beachhead that we pull up on being empty. And I'm just going to go to my favorite table here to roll a D100 to see what we get in terms of that likelihood, and put away all my dice. All right, here we go. So I'm going to say it's very likely that there's going to be something on the beachhead when we get there. And wow, indeed, it's strongly likely. We rolled a 7, so definitely there's going to be something there. As we approach this island, we need to figure out where we're going to land on it. I just had a position like this, but who knows how we're gonna arrive. So there are. That's not going to be good, too. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're arriving actually the way it's positioned here, in some forest. And to figure out where we are exactly and how this is going to go, I'm turning to Hot Springs Island again. This is our island map, so we know that we are arriving at one of the forest hexes here. Could be light jungle. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are the possible hexes that we could land at. We land at hex 4. 1, 2, 3. That's HSO8. HSO8. Whoops. The Whale Graveyard. It's a broad beach with bloated carcasses of gigantic gray whales littering half a mile of shoreline, and white bones are strewn across the black sand. Seabirds nest on many of the outcroppings, staining portions of the basalt yellow and pink with their droppings. The whole graveyard stinks, but in the wrong way. Even though huge corpses bloat and pop on the black sands, the death smells fresh. Raw meat from these corpses can cure non-magical illnesses. Okay. And we know we're going to have some type of encounter here. So let's roll our 3d6 and see what we get for that. We have an 11, so we're going to have some type of a beast. It's going to be a boar. And we're going to have, let's see, it's motivated toward combat, and there's going to be D4 boar here. So 1. All right. Well, at least that's something. So we arrive at this island. There is an aggressive boar on the shores here. It's going to be motivated toward combat. We know that we're motivated toward combat, and we're going to have to deal with this thing right now. To work up the boar's basic stats, I'm going to basic fantasy here, and from that, I'm putting it into the knave system, and I need to get its hit points with the 3 hit dice, so I'll show you that roll here. The rest of the stats are just conversion stats or not, based on the roll and the instructions from Knave. Now, and actually this is a pretty low total, 6, 7. So that's pretty, it's a pretty small bore, but nevertheless, that was the roll I got. So we are approaching this boar on the shores, and we're going to have some combat. All right, so here we are. We have our boar here. It's not really a boar, but it's the best I could do. We have our party here exiting the boat, and each of these dark squares is going to be about 10 feet of movement. The first thing we're going to do is roll a d6 for initiative to see which side is going to get to act first, and on a 2, they will act first. So what this is going to mean is that the boar is going to come rushing forward, and we have our 3 members, our 3 party members here. So I think I'll do a d3 roll to see who the boar is going to rush toward. And we'll take it 1, 2, 3 down the line. It's going to rush toward the red guy. I think I had the red one as the outlaw. Well, he's going to be the outlaw because that's the way I have it ordered here. So the boar is going to rush forward toward the outlaw, and he has a movement of 40, so he's actually not going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, and his second action is going to be another movement. He's going to just sort of come charging ahead, but he's actually out of movement there to do much of anything, and we're going to respond by taking out our dagger and attempting an attack on this boar, and we're going to do that by rolling a d20 and adding our strength bonus, which is a 4, and we got a 15 plus 4, which is greater than his defense of 13, so we're going to land a 1d6 hit on the boar. Whoops. A 1d6 hit on the boar, and that was a 5, and we mentioned earlier that his life total was only a 10, so we are very viciously striking back at the boar, bringing him down to a 5. And for the second round, you're going to roll initiative for each round, and for the second round, we continue to act, because on a 4 to a 6, we continue to act, and I'm going to have my outlaw go for it once again by continuing to stab this guy. This time he doesn't quite succeed. So his first action is a fail, and he's not going to be moving anywhere. I suppose he could move away, but no, I think he's going to take another combat action. So he'll continue trying to stab at the boar, and he is successful here, and we'll see if he can take care of him there. Nope, he does 4 more damage. So the boar is bleeding, but still with us at 1 health point, and he's going to come charging ahead, and he will attempt with a roll of a 7. That's not going to cut it. The boar is not going to injure the tracker, and for the next combat round, he gets one more attack, and this time at a 12 with his attack of 3, he does inflict damage. He's going to do 2d4 damage on the outlaw, and we'll see what that turns out to be. 7 points of damage. Ouch. On our outlaw. So our outlaw is pretty severely wounded there by the tusk of this boar, and we're going to roll and see what side gets to go next. And on a 4, it is us. So stepping up is going to be the tracker. The tracker is going to move here with his dagger, and remember, the boar's got 1 life point left, and this is going to finish him off. It's going to land a hit, and basically no matter what we get is going to, and we got just it. So unless my math is wrong, we just got rid of the boar, but our Severin here is pretty badly wounded. And this is a good opportunity to show how leveling up of health points works, because I failed to do that here. We have them with 5 health points, but actually I made them a level 3 and never increased the health points. And the way this works is for each level you are, you will roll that number of d8s equal to your new level to find your new HP maximum. So for level 2, the HP that we should have had was a 13, and then for level 3, which is indeed the level that we are, the HP that we should be at here is 15. So 15 with a damage of 7, so we're actually at 8 HP, despite what this says. I have to make that correction. So I will give us the appropriate number of our both, well, we have 8 as our current, and our maximum was 15 at level 3. So it was a bit of a bloody combat here on the beach, but we dispense with the boar, and I think we can now investigate whether we get anything from him or not. So here we are on this beachhead littered with the whale corpses, and now we have this slain boar that is bleeding out. We can make an attempt to prepare rations from its body. So we're going to have a 1 in 6 chance of its body being useful for this. So we'll give that a roll and see whether we can get a 1 there, and we do not. So we can't really do much with its carcass, but we're here with these whales and taking a look, stepping back at the situation here. I'm realizing that we are getting a strong suggestion here of more of the story emerging from this environment. And why do I say that? Well, our outlaw here, we rolled this up randomly. You recall that our outlaw was carrying soap. And here we are landing at a beachhead full of whale carcasses. And as we know, back in other times, whale blubber was used to make soap. This guy is an outlaw. Perhaps he was a trader. He's paired with a tracker. I was thinking initially that the tracker was a land tracker, because that's just what I automatically thought of, despite the fact that our main character here is this mariner. But I'm realizing now that this tracker was perhaps also a sailor. Perhaps he tracked whales, and perhaps the two of these fellows worked together as traders to find whales, slaughter them, take their blubber to make soap in some way. And I don't know how they became connected with the defrauded mariner. Maybe they had hired him as a guide for their travels, and they've been traveling around this island. And when we met them up in the water, even though in my mind then I was thinking like, well, they're probably floating around and arriving somewhere to this island, perhaps they had actually left the island and were coming back. Perhaps this is part of their journey to the work that they do, that they're trackers of whales, they're traders, they make the soap out of the blubber. So here they are on the beach with the slaughtered boar, and I think, and the other point here is this mariner had, as you will recall, I rolled up again randomly, these cook pots, again, seemingly nonsensical in a way, but if you look at them thematically, connecting this mariner to these two ceremonial outlaws and trackers, and perhaps this ceremonial clothing is representative of. They are part of an order in the village hierarchy that allows them to have the sacred job of searching for these whales. Maybe the whales are revered in some way, but it is more important to get there, to harvest them, and therefore that job is accorded in some way to people who wear some kind of ceremonial clothing. And the ceremonial clothing is not necessarily meant that they are jailers, that it's perhaps more intrinsic to their own status. To be determined, still unclear. What I want to attempt now to do is, I don't have a sense from what I'm piecing together whether still they are in a dangerous situation at this point. I do want them to move toward the northeast hex on the map to get to that location, whatever that location may be. But they're not going to abandon these whale carcasses without trying to forage them in some way. So what we can do as a foraging action is we can roll against our wisdom with disadvantage to see whether we're able to do anything with the whales. And everybody has the same wisdom here, so we're going to be rolling 2d20, and disadvantage means we have to take the lower of the rolls, and we're looking for a total of a 15 or higher for a success. So that's a 10 plus a 3. So unfortunately we're like just successful, and if we weren't at disadvantage we would have been able to get some harvesting from them, but we can't collect any blubber. And I think we're going to move on. We still have our injured party member, but we're going to get to the village. We need to discover what this village or location or town is. And for that, I'm going to go back to Hot Springs Island, because this is where we are, and take a look here. Move these guys out of the way. We were at this whale graveyard, and this is our hex HSO8. Here, here it's undefined, actually. Can you see that? Yes. Here it's undefined. It goes off the water, but there is this location here, HSO4. So we're going to move up, walk up there, spending some time. I'm not really keeping track of time. 30 large huts stand in clusters around a central mound covered in greenery. Many of the clusters are surrounded by trenches, with new trenches in the works. Piles of logs and boulders are scattered throughout the village, and a number of polished obsidian outcrops shine like black mirrors. Smoke rises from many campfires, and the whole area has an aura of defensive tension that could snap in an instant. It's the main home of the Night Axe on Hot Springs Island, and full details are on page 50. Glavrock Village is home to almost all the remaining ogres on Hot Springs Island. Defense and growth are Glavrock's main focus, so huts are arranged in tight clusters and typically surrounded by trenches filled with obsidian spikes. Large piles of boulders and lumber are scattered throughout the area to facilitate growth and repairs, and to serve as makeshift weapons. All right, we can do a couple of things here. We can we've got some, a 3d6 what's happening table here we could roll on. Within Knave, we can roll, I believe it's a d12. So let's do this d12 just to get a sort of general reaction sense of what could be going on here, like in terms of their attitude toward us. We rolled a 3, so they're going to be unfriendly. And let's do the 3d6 and just kind of see, we're observing here. Again, not clear to me, are we part of this village or are we not? No idea. No idea. We rolled a 6. Deep 4+1 adventurers hide in the jungle preparing to attack the village. Well, is Is that us? Is that us? Or is this kind of a meta thing that we're seeing ourselves preparing to attack the village? Or are we part of this village? And as we return to the village, we notice that it is potentially under attack, and it is up to us to mount the warning somehow and and join our brethren here to protect our own. It does seem to make more thematic sense to me that we are coming back from the beachhead. We fought off this boar. We were unsuccessful at harvesting any more of that blubber. We're injured. And as we are arriving back, we see that our village is under threat. And I need to do a D10 roll to see sort of where in the jungle are we coming back from, or where are we approaching 5? So we're coming down this way where we see across the distance the threat. And 5 is the bone carver's hut. Let's get a better look here at this. It's 2 Bone and Mud's hut. There's a campfire, a huge stack of bones everywhere. Whale, clean and bleached. There's benches and tables, some blocks and white dust. And the person who is here is one of the oldest night acts. He teaches night acts young bone shaping and bone binders bone magic on page 129. Let's have a look at that and see. Maybe we are part of maybe we're connected to him. You'll remember that our tracker had the spell that allowed him to, can't remember what it's called, this swarm spell where he could sort of become things. And he also had this sorting spell where inanimate objects could sort themselves. So here we have arrived at, we are going back to this bone carver's hut where the bone binders live. And these are shamans born with a gift of magic. And every child born to this tribe is tested for the gift, and those identified are raised by a bone binder and trained until adulthood in the ways of bone magic. Bone binders are the leaders of the Night Acts both culturally and tactically, and their goal is the long-term success of their people. They bind their spells into bones. Stored spells are released by breaking the bones, and since anyone can do this, the shamans are very careful with the bones they give out. Bird bones work the best and are used most frequently, but any bone will do. Perhaps we are bone binders, or at least somebody here is a bone binder, because we do have some spells, and while it says here that bird bones work the best, perhaps fish bones work as well. We're coming back to the bone carver's campsite here, and we notice that the village is being threatened. Perhaps we are here looking back at Weimar, who I said was our hero. You'll recall that one of the spells he had was this pacify spell. And let's go back and look at the wording of that exactly. Casting that spell, the creatures have an aversion to violence. So maybe our defrauded mariner here is someone who goes in search of animals. I'm going to stick with a whale theme, but maybe they go in search of whale bones to harvest the whale bones, and not necessarily only the blubber. Maybe the blubber is a byproduct of this. And he casts his spell on those creatures to kill them, because that he kills them magically to harvest them and the bones. We don't really have any, the only suggestion of the bones here is that we're returning there. We're still not clear on, or I'm still not clear on, the city official that our mariner owes a debt to, and why he was a prisoner and how he was defrauded. Never really got there. But I do have a sense now that they're part of this village, and perhaps the two, Severin and Denor, saved or rescued Weimark in some way from the fate of being imprisoned, and are bringing him back to the village, specifically to this village elder who now is going to perhaps offer some advice or become their savior in some way, and they in turn are going to help protect the village from the marauders that they have seen on the outskirts of the forest. Well, I think I'm going to stop here because I've sort of gone off into Hot Springs Island land and this world here really, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm not prepared to continue on after this length of time sort of developing that out. But that is where I would go with it, or maybe where I will go with it off camera. The purpose, starting out here with Knave, this rather simple system, I think took me there because I'm not sure, frankly, I don't know that I would come back to Knave so much again. The mechanics are nice and simple, but there are many systems that offer nice and simple mechanics, including maze rats, which I found more generative somehow for its own resources. And in fact, with Knave here, Knave itself includes as resources some stuff from maze rats, the monsters, and I think some of the spell formulas and things. So I'm not sure what's offered here, the weather travel rules and the exploration rules. I'm not sure that's enough to compel me to turn to Knave again as a basic system, as opposed to if I was staying sort of within this designer's work, as opposed to using maze rats and then kind of coming in with a few of the Knave stuff, as opposed to starting with Knave and then going back out to maze rats. There was just something here that I felt myself kind of trying to move away from it to get to something else. Now, indeed, I believe what it says is this is kind of a toolkit, and so in that regard, I suppose I used it as such. But I don't know. For me, I think perhaps there might be better toolkits out there that offer a little more depth or flexibility within and of themselves. One thing I did like here, and I didn't really get into this so much in terms of the combat, is you could have a little bit of chase. There are some simple rules for doing a little more in-depth things in combat, and this where is it? Under here, this stunts, which I mentioned earlier in the video. Stunts are combat maneuvers such as stunning, shoving, disarming, tripping, surrendering, etc. that resolve with a versus save. I think that's a very useful and interesting thing, which I didn't actually demonstrate, particularly for the soloist, because in the sense of what I was doing, we had the beachhead with the littered whale corpses. I could have perhaps I could have provided a little more there, I'll be honest, in terms of having our party try to perhaps hide behind that and have the boar charge at them and have some back and forth like that. And I'll be honest, I didn't do that because of partially the filming. When I was breaking up the filming, I didn't really refer back to the environment that we were in, and I forgot about the whales. I just remembered the beachhead. So that's a little bit on me, but this does offer that the stunts here I think is useful, as are these other optional rules for chases, and we have climbing and falling. Again, the fact that these are optional rules does give you an indication of the kind of simplicity of the basic system. But I think that this and the preparing rations for monsters is nice, but 1 in 6 chance, it's usually not going to happen. But this will give you to do some wilderness travel and to really, I just kind of had us move to the next hex, but we could have walked there, we could have rolled for random terrain and rocks and obstacles and things, and then attempted to climb over them. We could have done all of that. I didn't do it. We could have done all of that, and if we had some failure, we would have had our damage done. I mean, this here is under these optional rules are a very nice light way of providing a lot more texture to the game, particularly if you are doing some type of wilderness travel. So for that, I would recommend this over Maze Rush, which I don't think has this in it. The navigation, same thing. I had us just kind of arriving somewhere. It wasn't really doing so much of a overseas travel part, even though there was that as the setup. But there are these very simple rules for that if you wanted to build it in. So in that regard, and again, the weather at the sea and things of that nature are provided here, as are weather for flying. So they're in that sense, as an add-on, or maybe taking these rules, actually the travel rules. Maybe I'll do this in an upcoming video if I remember, taking some of these very simple travel rules and translating them into some other system if I'm having movement, because it does build in this concept of you can be damaged or hurt while traveling, and the risks, it's a way of modeling some of that risk. So there is a look inside really Knave and Hot Springs Island, and we finish here in defense of the village.